Chapter V Forms and Procedure of Communication 28. Forms of communication. The different forms of communication, its content and format generally used by a department are reproduced below. Sad face I. Letter used for corresponding with state governments, various constitutional bodies, heads of attached and subordinate officers, public enterprises, statutory authorities, public bodies and members of the public generally. A letter begins with the salutation, Sir, Madam, as may be appropriate. Note: in case of correspondence with foreign government, instructions issued by Ministry of External Affairs from time to time are to be followed. A demi-official letter generally used in correspondence between government offices for inviting their personal attention on the issue. Since demi-official letter is written in the first person in a personal and friendly tone, it should be addressed by an officer in a ministry department who is ordinarily not more than 1 or 2 levels below the officer to whom such communication is addressed. Communications to non-officials can also take the form of a demi-official letter. The color code and use of national emblem on DO letter will be as per the instructions issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs from time to time. Office memorandum generally used for corresponding with other departments are in calling for information from or conveying information to its employees. It may also be used in corresponding with attached and subordinate officers. It is written in third person and bears no salutation or supersession except the name and designation of the officer signing it. IV Interdepartmental Note. Earlier referred to as UO Note IE before 7th edition of CSMOP, are generally employed for obtaining the advice, views, concurrence or comments of other departments on a proposal or in seeking clarification of the existing rules, instructions etc. It may also be used by a department when consulting it, as attached and subordinate officers and vice versa. B. The interdepartmental note may either be recorded on a file or a file where two departments have connectivity referred to another department or may take the form of an independent self-contained note. Office order normally used for issuing instructions meant for internal administration, e.g., grant of regular leave, distribution of work among officers and sections, appointments and transfers etc. Order generally used for issuing certain types of financial sanctions and for communicating government orders in disciplinary cases, etc. to the officials concerned. Notification mostly used in notifying promulgation of statutory rules and orders, appointments and promotions of gazetted officers etc. through publications in the Gazette of India. Note: the classification of categories of notification. Extraordinary notification shall be as per the instructions issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs from time to time. Resolution. This form of communication is used for making public announcement of decisions of government in important matters of policy in e.g. the policy of industrial licensing, appointment of committees or commissions of inquiry. Resolutions are also published in the Gazette of India. Express communique. Note: this form is used when it is proposed to give wide publicity to a decision of government. A press communique is more formal in character. Thana press note and is expected to be reproduced intact by the press. A press note, on the other hand, is intended to serve as a handout to the press which may edit, compress or enlarge it, as deemed fit. Endorsement. This form is used when a receipt has to be returned in original to the sender, or no, the receipt in original or its copy is sent to another department or office, for information or action. It is also used when a copy of a communication is proposed to be forwarded to parties other than the one to which it is addressed. Normally this form will not be used in communicating copies to state governments. The appropriate form for such communication should be a letter. Chief minutes. A record of discussions is prepared immediately after the meeting and circulated to the other ministries departments concerned, giving date, time, venue of the meeting held, who chaired the meeting and list of participants, setting out the conclusions reached and indicating the ministries departments responsible for taking further action on each conclusion. In case it is perceived by a participant of the meeting that the minutes recorded are not as per the understanding perception of the participant, the same may be immediately referred in writing to the authority which has issued the minutes. Modes of communications shall be decided depending on the nature and urgency of message to be conveyed. 29. Correspondence with attached and subordinate officers. Senior officers, head of a subordinate attached office under an administrative ministry department shall correspond in respect of matters involving intervention, approval of another ministry department in a form of a note, email, a file to their concerned ministry department. In case of seeking clarifications relating to 28 rules guidelines from departments like Department of Expenditure, Department of Personnel, Ministry of Health etc., the attached subordinate officers can communicate directly without the intervention of their parent ministry department. 30. Single file system. This shall apply to matters which have to be referred by non-secretariat office NSO to the department for seeking a sanction order, i.e. a decision not within its own delegated powers. This shall not apply to matters which in a hybrid environment, i.e. where either the department or the NSO is still operating in paper mode, non-electronic. In such cases, the procedure detailed in para below will be followed. In cases where both the department and NSO are electronically connected, the workflow given below will be followed. The SFS file need not bear an ID no or other formal method of sending, but will be sent as though it is from one officer to another in the same organization. B. The SFS file shall be completed in all respects, so as to enable the department to take a decision expeditiously. Hence the NSO will ensure that every point for decision order is clearly brought out. All relevant connected papers are placed on the file. Files, properly arranged and referred to. Draft orders, sanctions are put up, where they are required to be approved by the department for issue, and the availability of funds, etc., is certified where additional expenditure is involved in the proposal. The officer last dealing with the SFS case in the NSO shall mark it to the appropriate officer in the department, by name. Policy files will, however, be 29 referred to the department at appropriate levels to be determined by the department and the NSO concerned, through a general order. All SFS files shall invariably be routed through the central registry of the department concerned. We, as a rule, all noting in the department will be on the NSO file. However, where sensitive or delicate matters in the sphere of personnel, policy issues and finance are involved, the recording of notes in backward duplicate, A files may be permitted by issuing general or special orders by the department. This will be done at a particular stage of the SFS case or at or above a particular level, with the final decision thereafter being suitably recorded on the SFSA file. We, as a convention, the Secretariat noting on a SFS file shall start on a new page in the noting done sequentially save in matters of the nature referred to in the above. We, and action to implement the government decision in SFS case shall be initiated in by the NSO on the return of the file. Orders so issued should specifically state that these have received the concurrence of government in the department concerned. Copies of every sanction order so issued by the NSO will be endorsed without fail to all the officers concerned in the department. 31. References to the Attorney General of India. References to the Attorney General shall be made by the Ministry of Law and Justice. 32. References to constitutional statutory authorities. References to constitutional and statutory authorities such as Election Commission of India, Union Public Service Commission etc. shall normally be made in the letter form addressed to Principal Secretary of the Commission. 33. References to the Controller and Auditor General of India. References to the Controller and Auditor General of India for his views or advice shall be made only by or through the Ministry of Finance. In matters of day-to-day administration, ministries' departments may, however, at their discretion, correspond directly with the Controller and Auditor General of India. 34. Correspondence with Union Territory Administrations. All communications of a routine nature which clearly relate to the business of a particular department shall ordinarily be addressed to the Secretary in the appropriate department. Other important communications may be addressed to the Chief Secretary or the Administrator as the case may be. 35. A correspondence with state governments. Communications in the subjects which clearly relate to the business of a particular department shall normally be addressed to the Secretary of that department. Other communications including those of special nature or importance warranting attention at higher levels may be addressed to the Chief Secretary. Demi-official letters may also be sent to officers of state governments. In case of demi-official communication as to the Chief Secretary of a state, this level shall not be below the level of Joint Secretary. Communications other than those of a purely routine nature e.g., acknowledgements shall not ordinarily be addressed to state governments except with the prior approval and under the signature of the branch officer. Purely routine communications may, however, be signed by a section officer. 36. Correspondence with the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha Secretariats. Communications meant for the Lok Sabha Secretariat or the Rajya Sabha Secretariat and requiring urgent or high-level attention shall be addressed to the secretaries concerned and not to the Speaker or the Chairman directly. 37. A correspondence with members of Parliament and VIPs. Communications received from members of Parliament and VIPs should be attended to promptly. Where a communication is addressed to a minister, it shall, as far as possible, be replied to by the minister himself. In other cases, a reply should normally be signed by an officer of the rank of secretary only. Where, however, a communication is addressed to the head of an attached 31 subordinate office, public sector undertakings, financial institutions including nationalized banks division branch in charge in a ministry department organization, shall be replied to by the addressee himself. In routine matters, he may send an appropriate reply on his own. In policy matters, however, the officer should have prior consultation with higher authorities before sending a reply. It should, however, be ensured that the minimum level at which such replies are sent to members of Parliament and VIPs is that of under secretary and that also in letter form only. Normally information sought by a member VIP should be supplied unless it is of such a nature that it would have been denied to him even if asked for on the floor of the Houses of Parliament. In case, a reference from an ex-member of Parliament is addressed to a minister or secretary, reply to such reference may be sent by a joint secretary level officer after obtaining approval of the secretary of the ministry department. In case the reference is addressed to a lower level officer, reply to such reference could be sent by the officer on his own in non-policy cases and after obtaining approval of the higher authorities in policy cases. However, the minimum level at which reply could be sent should be that of an undersecretary and that too in a polite letter form only. Each communication received from a member of Parliament VIP shall be acknowledged within 15 days, followed by a reply within the next 15 days of acknowledgement sent. Appropriate record shall be maintained in respect of communications received from members of Parliament and VIPs and monitored by all concerned. A similar procedure may also be followed for judicial quasi-judicial matters. 38. Correspondence with ministers of state governments. The procedure laid down in the above paragraph number 37 shall also be followed in dealing with communications received from the ministers of state governments. 39. Correspondence with foreign governments and international organizations. Correspondence with foreign governments and their missions in India, heads of Indian diplomatic missions and posts abroad and United Nations and its specialized agencies shall normally be through the Ministry of External Affairs. Exceptions to this may be made only as per the instructions issued by the Ministry of External Affairs in this regard from time to time. 40. Target date for replies in all important matters in which state governments, departments of the central government, or other offices, public bodies or individuals are consulted. Time limit for replies may ordinarily be specified. On expiry of the specified date, orders of the appropriate authority may be obtained on whether the officers, whose replies have not been received, may be allowed an extension of time or whether the matter may be processed on the basis of the information available, without waiting for their replies. Chapter 7 Draft